Okay, you feel ready. We got the gel in the hair. Are you good?
No, I had nightmares about this last night. So
Oh, no. Did you really?
No, not really.
Yes.
No, it's a waking nightmare. I woke up and now I'm in it.
Welcome to Pushing Past Polite, where we're in spooky season and we're way too close to Keith's worst nightmare.
And we make Keith squirm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, Keith, are you going to do the intro?
Yeah. Do you want to?
Welcome to Pushing Past Polite, where other people talk about what matters and make the world more just. And I occasionally appear for comic relief. I'm Keith.
I'm Laura.
I'm Corey.
And we can't stop laughing, but we're so glad you're all here.
It's a Keith episode.
It is. It's like episode 3 Costco, where you just drop in. You actually planned for. There's no backwards hat. You zhuzhed up the front of the banks, and we're we're lucky for it. So if you're just joining us this morning and this is your first time hearing this mysterious voice, this is our illustrious, wonderful, no, truly very good human, good friend, producer Keith. And he's joining us because of the topic we've chosen to cover.
Welcome, Keith.
I'm here against my will again.
Oh, yeah. That only works the first time. If you return to your captors.
This is true. It's Stockholm
syndrome.
Like, you sent the link to this, so.
You were ready. So in the course of our conversations and becoming friends, better friends, Keith and I realized that we shared an experience, and we have not talked in any detail prior to today about that experience. So Keith, you have full right of refusal on any edits you realize you don't want to talk about afterwards. But we realized that we both not only were children of divorce, which is not that uncommon, right? I mean, it's pretty high percentage of marriages end that way. But we are both, we were adult children of divorce. So it occurred in our adulthood when our parents split. And so that to me was an interesting dynamic. I don't know many other people that have had that experience. Often it's when they're kids, right? And so I was curious about how that played out and how that impacts you. So how old were you when your parents split?
It's 2017, so I was in my mid-30s. My dad was in his 70s and my mom was close to it.
Okay. I was a little younger. I was in my early 20s, just having, come out of college and started my career. And my parents then 30 years older. So more in their 50s, early 60s range. So still some good life in them, ready for our next chapter, which fully get and support. Was this a surprise to you? Like, how would you characterize your parents' marriage up until that point?
It's weird. So the way that it happened, the final dissolution was really, it came out of nowhere. To me, it was a surprise. But my parents had separated a couple times throughout their marriage. They've been together for 40 years. They separated once when I was in grade school, and then they separated once again, like right after I got out of high school. They had patched up each time and moved on, but this last time was very final and very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't remember any periods of separation in our house, but similarly, it wasn't like I did not live in a house filled with trauma or lots of yelling or arguing. I'm making that assumption, but it sounds like, pretty easygoing until some breaks. But yeah, I had a fairly normal childhood. Again, was it the most, the perfect marriage? No, but they each had their lanes. My mom was a homemaker and took care of us as kids. My dad made the money, was the breadwinner, and then would come home and have his hobbies on the weekend. And she was always with us. So, not necessarily the perfect model, but there was never knockdown dragouts, nothing like that. Similar for you?
Not really. My parents did fight a lot. They both had their own issues. I don't know how much detail I want to give, but
that's
my
fair.
mom struggled with mental health, and my dad struggled with other things. But again, it wasn't like there was no violence or abuse. They just argued a lot. And it was similar to my dad was the major breadwinner. He worked in construction and soils, and he even did septic system work. Like he literally worked in dirt and shit for 12 or 13 hours a day, worked really hard. My mom did what she could. She was just a high school graduate. So there were periods where she would be home with us, but for the most part, my brother and I were latchkey kids. So we always really saw them in the house together for, a couple hours a day, a few hours a day, and they would still find time to fight occasionally. Things seemed to get better, though, as they got older. And me and my brother left the house. Maybe it's just because I wasn't around as much, but it seemed like they were getting better.
Well, and while you are a lovely human, and I'm sure your brother is too, kids are stressors in a relationship.
And how
Corey?
old were your parents when they all got married? When Keith, when your parents got married, and Laura, when your parents got married, how old were they?
My mom was 19 and my dad was 22. So.
That's
That is
extremely young.
It is, and yet for that generation, probably not crazy young, a little
Right.
young maybe for that generation. My parents were older, again, for that generation, not old by any stretch of the imagination. I want to say like 26, 27. And then they didn't have kiddos. I was the first one and I came, about 5 years later. So yeah, no, was there an implication of that, Corey, you were thinking of in terms of?
Well, he was saying that as they got older, that things like they stopped arguing as much, right? And so as you mature, sometimes you realize you pick your battles differently. You
Right.
don't want to fight as much. But when you're a kid, 19, 20, 22, 25, 28, you might be more interested in, you don't have the communication skills in the same way, especially you haven't had an opportunity to develop them in relationships when you're 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prefrontal cortex is not firmly developed, right?
Right.
So,
And so your people are growing up together. And so they're growing up using the skills that they were taught or observed, but you're growing up together. And so as they continue to grow up, maybe that's part of the reduction in the fighting, because for whatever reason, it's like it's not worth it, not worth the energy or the effort or whatever. But they grew up a little bit.
yeah. Yep. No, that makes sense. Well, and then your parents were married for a while before they had kiddos too, right?
My parents?
Yeah.
They were older when they had my brother. I'm trying to do the math right now, but they had to be in their 30s when they had my brother.
This is not a mental math podcast. Take your deep breath. You do not need to justify your life timeline.
There's my calculator. I have a calculator around here
Carry
somewhere.
the one, new millennium. Okay, no, you don't have to do any of that.
No, in terms of maturing and growing up, I that's what I had, I guess, assumed. My mom got, healthcare, and my mom was a very different person when I was younger versus when I was an adult. She's so different now. I love her to death, but that I think was part of it, but also the way that things ended between them. I think that they didn't really fix things, that things were just sort of, they learned to avoid certain things or how to just deal with it silently. And then eventually
Came to a head.
yeah, I mean, it was really one-sided. It's different for me. I'm coming at this sort of obliquely, so I should just probably lay it out. So my parents lived together in New Jersey in like a small house. I'd go visit them pretty regularly during the summer, especially. I'd go to the beach. I'd hang out with my parents. Sometimes I would stay over. So one time I went on a Friday night. I stayed over at their house. I was going to go to the beach in the morning. Woke up and my dad wasn't there. And I asked, I'm like, where's dad? And my mom sort of like brushed it off. Was like, go to the beach. It's fine. And then later that night, she finally talked to me. And I still don't have all the details. She's been very slow giving it. But she said, your dad's not coming home ever. And it turns out he had met a woman through a colleague at work and had a relationship with her and was sleeping on the couch. And then one day just decided, I'm going to go live with her. Goodbye. And that was it. So it was sort of, it was very one-sided between the two of them. And this is turning into a therapy session. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
This is the first time I've really talked about it. But yeah, it was surprising because again, I had thought that maybe they were working things out and had settled
on
in.
the upswing portion.
And it turns out that at 70, my dad was like, I can't do this anymore, and made the most radical decision of his life. So it was really surprising.
I am sorry that for the way that hits and impacts you as adult kid. That's probably a lot, and we can talk about that, I suppose, in a minute. But thank you for sharing it. I just wanted to say that as your friend.
Thank you.
Interestingly, some similar themes. I remember picking up on where there was never a separation that I recall. There was definitely talk of, there were hints to me, right? So my mom had a very separate life. She had her friends. She was very involved in church, hyper involved in church. My dad had no interest in that. And that was a point of tension between them because she was growing this direction and he was not interested in that. But also too, I distinctly remember a couple of, like the D word, right? The divorce word coming up a few different junctures throughout the marriage. And I remember seeing clues of my mom trying to become financially independent, which of course, as a woman, like I can appreciate that's a fear or could be a fear and could be something that keeps you in a relationship longer than you want to be. I remember her not only taking a job, but then trying to get a teaching certificate. And of course, that involved coursework and online courses. And I remember her being really excited about what she could possibly do. And then realizing she was in over her head in terms of the difficulty, either the format or the content. I don't really remember which, and being kind of down about that. And again, I have empathy as a human. That would be really freaking hard. I also remember at one point my mom getting on some medication for some mental health things as well, Keith, and feeling like they were having a really good, like, golden period right before everything fell apart. My parents were doing better than they ever had. And in that, like, golden moment with my mom on some medication is when I met my husband. We started dating. And so I remember being like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. Like, we would go over after dates and like hang out with them because I was so excited to show him like how great things were. And so when things did crash and burn, it was particularly like he had a front row seat to all of it. It was really both rough and showed a lot about who he was for showing up, you know? It was a lot.
Yeah.
But my mom came off of those meds. She had a surgery, an elective surgery, and took herself off the meds and never wanted to go back on. And so very quickly,
things unraveled.
All the positive progress that had been made unraveled. And first, it was even between she and I before even the divorce thing happened. I didn't like how she was talking to me, treating me. And so when I confronted Bernie, you know, my husband encouraged me to talk to her. And when I did, she's like, here's the doctor's number. You get on the medication. That was that conversation. And so our relationship started to fracture already. And then my dad showed up.
How old were you?
21, 22. No, 22. Because I met my husband at 22.
Okay.
And so when my dad showed up on my doorstep in tears one day with just the clothes he had on, that was it, that he had been thrown out of the house, police, whole deal. Like,
oh my God.
At that point, I was like,
you know,
I was furious. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I want to share too many of the details of that on here. I'm happy to later.
Wow.
So I was so angry because I knew how she had alienated me. This is not, let me say very clearly, my dad is no angel. This is not like a very clear devil angel situation.
Same for me. Yeah.
But there are better, more healthy ways to end a situation than that. Right.
Right.
So anyway, it was that same idea, that golden moment, and then things fell.
But you guys, you were both pulled into it. Like you were both pulled into it, like in the moments that it was happening. Like that has to be a lot for you all as the children, being looped into this like very final and permanent breakup as it's happening in the midst of it. You know, like, I mean, I can only imagine the dizzying feeling of seeing your dad on your doorstep in tears with the clothes on his back and like all of the antics that were around that had him there. That's it. Right. And then you, Keith, doing your standard visit home.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
discovering
this kind of you saw him for the last time and you didn't know that you saw him for the last time of a period of time in that house.
Yeah. I mean, it was just surprising for me. And then, you know, I don't want to make it about me. I really have complicated feelings about my dad was really hardworking, sacrificed really hard. My family didn't have a lot, but he found like we had a 1/4-acre little house, but he found a way to like install an above ground pool. We had bagged cereal and we ate a lot of pasta and chili, but he would find a way to take us on a vacation. He's not a bad guy. Like you said, there's no angel or heroes here, but in this situation, he definitely is. My mom followed my dad around the country. He was the main breadwinner for the house. So she based her entire life on him
Mm.
and followed him. She would get like a professional certification somewhere, trying to get a career. And then my dad would say, nope, we have to move over
Ugh.
here. And then the cert wouldn't transfer across state lines and she'd be back.
To square one.
Her reward for 40 years of doing that
Mm.
is watching him go off with another woman and she's alone in a house with a dog. So it's
Yeah.
hard. It's really,
Yeah.
the complicated feelings that's what I'm left with in this situation. I can't help but feel, you're my dad, cool, but you also did this to my mom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
And
then, yeah.
that's kind of where I'm still at. I don't know how you reconcile.
I think because, to my knowledge, infidelity was not a piece of my parents' breakup, it's a little less weird for me in that sense, that ultimately they evolved into different people. I mean, they met at a discotheque in the 70s. Of course, they evolved into different people. um, so I also think too, like, while divorce is hard and, terrible in some respects, I think we're moving into a period culturally where people are normalizing a healthy end to something and then starting a new chapter. It's happening with our careers, right? Where we're not just one thing for 30 years. Like, I'm okay with saying, listen, this was a good run. You had 2 kids, you did whatever you did, you had some happy times, and let's kind of put a bookend on that. As hard as that is, if it were ended mutually and amicably, it was the mess of it that left me with so many complicated feelings, because I just was left devastated. And then I'm caring for, which of course is not appropriate, that my dad needed to rely on me, right? But his drinking, him dating again in my house. He lived with me. Like, my college-age sister came home from college to my house as a 22-year-old girl. It's like King of Queens. It's like bizarre. My boyfriend's sort of living here. My dad's sort of living here. It's not a big house, friends. I was a teacher. So it was wild. It was very complicated, but I have made peace because there was nothing so gray. I've made peace with the fact that it was what it was and it's over. It doesn't carry, the divorce element does not carry over into my relationship with my parents now. It's much more of who they are and the way that we interact, me and that parent, that carries over into our relationship now, that impacts it much more so than the divorce. But I can see how for you, that would feel different.
Well, no, I completely agree. And I think that your dad, if possible, could give my mom some dating tips, because she seems to think that like
I don't know, buddy.
her dating life is over. And I keep trying to convince her she looks good. She's in really good shape. She gets her hair dyed all the time. Like,
Have you seen The Golden Bachelor? That's pretty charming.
No.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
You
if
I'm
you were
watching that shit. I'm eating it up with a spoon. It's amazing. Sorry.
Back to your mom dating.
Dating tips.
No, it's fine. Yeah, she's always been she's not the most self-confident person. And she lives in one of those plus 55 communities.
Girl,
where, like,
it's built in. Go have fun.
yeah, she's got
Play
Yeah, it's like
mahjong.
STDs spread wildly in there.
yeah.
Yes, they do. It is not over, honey. Get yourself
Not
some,
over.
drop her off a package of something. That's funny.
I'm hoping that eventually she'll get to the point where she starts to see that this wasn't an indictment of her, and
No.
she has a lot of life left to live. But if there are any elderly listeners out there, good looking, let's
Within the
say
vicinity of where?
65, 70, somewhere in central New Jersey.
First of all,
Heyo.
why do they have to be 65, 70? Why can't they be 60 or 58?
Sure, if you're interested, available, and you're not a crazy person,
Mom likes long walks on the beach, pickleball, and her puppy.
Check out our socials. We'll post
yeah.
some pictures.
No,
With
we're
her
not going to do that.
permission. Oh God, he's
No,
dying.
we're
He's like, don't
no,
you
we're
hit on
not-
my mom.
No,
No, it's-
but if guys, no, you can go to our socials, leave a comment, send a
Gentlemen.
message.
Not just guys, gentlemen.
Yeah, gentlemen, please. hit
Keith
us up
will
on the
interview you and
socials.
see if you're good enough to
Mhm.
pass it
And
along.
then
Exactly.
Corey will interview you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're going to have to go through multiple rounds, because this is a fine woman we're talking about here. So,
Oh, how sweet that you love your mama like
Who
that.
we will not allow anyone to disrespect again.
Mm-mm. No, we have learned some lessons building forward.
no, but I will say, in terms of personal impact, I know it's stupid to sit here and go, this situation that happened to two people and like how it affects me. But for
No,
me,
well, let
like
me
it's
stop that. Pause.
mhm.
Pause.
No, wait, let him finish.
Oh, okay. Unpause.
What? No,
Play.
what? Go
Play,
ahead.
Keith. Finish your
Okay.
thought.
I was just gonna. It's there's no comparison between parents getting divorced when children are young and still living in the house, and when you're older and the children are off living their own lives. It's not as impactful, I don't think. I
I
don't.
don't know if that's true.
I.
I'm gonna say something there. You are allowed to talk about how it impacts you because I'm talking about to
Mhm,
you as somebody I care about and as my friend. Because if you were to say it was harder on me than my parents, I might be like, all right, come on now, that's a little ridiculous. But it's
yeah.
true that it does impact us. It impacts, there's ripple effects of that. The other thing I would say is, again, I can't have a sliding doors moment of had my parents gotten divorced when I was younger because I can't know. But
Hmm.
based on what I know of how things are handled generally in an ideal situation, or at least even an average situation, when kids are young and their parents divorce, there is support afforded to the children. It's like, oh, typically it's, the custody thing would be very difficult. Two homes, there's challenges of that. But at
Hmm.
least they have, in theory, the benefit of people who are caring about them and wondering how it's impacting them. When you're an adult, you don't have that. It's for me, I was kind of a forgotten element of that. My extended family rallied around my mother, her extended family, which makes sense. And I wanted her to have that support. But because my mom and I had a fractured relationship, the assumption was made that I was only on my dad's side and I was poisoned by him against her. And they
Oh.
literally cut me off. I don't
Wow.
have any extended family on that whole, with the exception of one uncle that, I think kind of saw through it all. But because I was an adult, my hope had been that they would respect me as an adult and respect my choices on how I was proceeding with both parents and why. But they didn't I got like the worst of both, where I
Oh.
didn't get the support that a kid would get, but I didn't get the respect that an adult should get for making their own choices.
And I think one of the other pieces is you lived your whole life observing them as a couple. And then at this like point in your life, they're not a couple. And your identity, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, is associated with them,
That unit.
that unit, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm Chip and Joni's daughter, right? That is a part of your identity. So when they separate from each other after you've had 30 years of the identity being associated with them as your parents, there is a significant impact. Where if you're younger, the potential exists that you are shaping these different identities, right? Because your part of your identity is that your parents aren't together and that you have two homes and that you maybe have two sets of parents that love you and 8 grandparents that love you, right? And so like it's this exponential community
Expansive.
that could potentially grow to support you because like Laura said, when children are younger, they are very much the focus and the center when these things happen.
Mhm.
And so the grandparents are rallying, the aunts and uncles are rallying, around the kids. But when the children are adults, even college-aged adults, how many times have you heard someone be like, yeah, we're just going to wait for the kids to finish high school and then we're going to get divorced, right? Like we're going to let them get through all of their formative years of schooling and then we're going to rock their world.
Mm-hmm. And I think
Mhm.
people come from a good place of saying, let's not do this two home thing. Let's not do this, that, or the other. But I wonder, my public service announcement, if you're unhappy, a happier home for a child, even if it's two homes, is better than one unhappy or this like potential rocking of a foundation later. That's my take.
I can't agree more with everything you both said. My After my preamble of like, I don't want to make this about me, but here, let me make it about me, was that the biggest impact I've had was actually my identity being based on my dad. And my dad was a very singular guy. He had very specific ideas of how people should live their lives, specifically how his sons should live
Mm,
their lives. And he, I can't tell you how many times I heard like, work hard, stay honest, and they can't take anything from you. Spoken like somebody who probably had some things taken from him in his
mm.
life, but he really drilled us about personal responsibility, handling the people
Oh,
you're like
Ay,
so
doing
ay,
it's like
what
a
you're
ay.
betrayal of his values
This
that
hits
he
hard.
It's worse than that because if you think about it, from my perspective, here's this guy who lived his life based on that credo and forced it into me and made me that person at the age of 70, basically looking around and going, "Oh, I fucked up.
Right.
I did this all wrong," and makes this radical change and completely like, since this happened, I guess the new woman has some money, literally been traveling the world. He's been going to Hawaii and
Mm.
Alaska, he's been on 2 cruises, and all the things he never did in his life, he's now, like, cramming it in. That's the part that rocked me the most is like,
Well,
"Oh my god, maybe I've been doing everything wrong too,"
Mm.
and yeah, so, again, not to make it about me, but
Stop with that
that's
phrase.
what
Yeah,
a mind fuck.
that is a mind
yeah,
fuck.
mhm, yeah, it's a lot.
Can I also, I think in our earlier conversations, correct me if I'm wrong too, you've told me that you physically look like your dad.
A lot, yeah. I
I
take after
physically
him.
look like my mother, who I do not have
Oh,
contact with. Does that get to you sometimes?
yeah.
Do you like look in the mirror and go, "Oh God, oh God, oh God"?
But do you think that it means that there's some more than superficial link between, like, you take after them more? I have that idea that I'm more part my dad because I look like him
Oh,
more.
like, so you're like his image. You're like in his image in
Yeah.
terms of how you're.
Yeah, or if characteristics and traits are more than just the physical, if you're saying like the way of being.
Mhm. Yeah, how you
Can we
view the
just
world.
pause?
Mhm.
Here's the good news.
Thank you. Yes, please.
What he did was very not cool, though. The radicalness of it was also a huge lesson for you that, like, if you are not living the life that you want at 30 something, at 40, then now it's time.
Did you notice that I just packed up and left Philadelphia and moved to Florida?
Exactly.
And I drove
Exactly.
across the country a little bit?
Mm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's definitely
It's like,
that's part of it.
so embody those elements of him.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, even though he's no longer in the home or with your mom, he's still showing you a way to live and be. And some of that is something that you want to embody. Like, even though it's counterintuitive to like what he instilled in you and growing up, he's demonstrating something for you right now that you should also be paying attention to in how to live your life before you're freaking 70.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, you're
That's a
right.
good point, that we don't need to take all of our parents. We can take the best parts of our
Take the best
parents
parts of them.
and leave the rest.
Yeah, and then let's get hooked up and and get you a sugar daddy stepdad.
Uh-huh.
And
Let's
then
get her on a
start,
cruise,
yeah,
people.
let's get her on a cruise.
Yeah.
Let's get her jet setting.
Exactly. That would make me happier than anything else would be to see my mom come out of this happy too.
Yeah.
What a freaking good son. Oh my God, as a mom of a boy, you are like speaking to my heart. This is so
Well,
sweet.
speaking about moms, how about you, Laura? Is there happy ending there? Do you think that things could change while there's still time?
I will say this. I'm always open to that. However, I'll also say my standard is not perfection. Because I know that would be, first of all, not only is that not possible, but that's just not how I would ever have any expectations. That said, we had about 10 years of well, there's been a lot of shit done over the years between her and I that, not the least of which trying to undermine my wedding. She did not come to my wedding. I had to keep it a secret. It was a whole thing. Oh, Keith.
Can we tell that story? That's
One day we can. You bet we
Okay.
can. She showed up without permission to the hospital when I had my first child, lied past the nursing station to come back and see me. After I hadn't seen
Wow.
her in years and years and years, I had just had an emergency C-section and my husband intercepted her. So like there was a long period of don't you fucking dare, followed by some mediated counseling with the three of us, at the end of which the counselor said, "Good luck, honey." Like, I don't,
Oh.
the mom, if you're listening, I know you follow me on socials. You're probably going to hear this and you may have a very different take, and that is fair. But this is my lens of my reality on this. She embodies, because she is old school Italian, you have that one dynamic. You also have 100% Italian, by the way. You also have the evangelical fundamentalist culture where God is on my side and everybody else is wrong and going to hell. And so when you put The family is everything. Respect your mother. And if you don't agree with me,
You go in hell.
you know, you're wrong. You're very wrong. I'm always right because I am your mother.
Mm.
There's only allowance for me to be her carbon copy. And if I just take the best of her, but not all of her, there is no room for me. And that has been abundantly clear. We have, in recent years, my kids have had interactions with her. I remember introducing my first 2 kids to her at a certain point. We kind of built a little bit. There was some acknowledgement on her part that she had done something wrong. Okay, great. I'll meet you. But the problem is for us, she doesn't respect me as a co-equal adult because I am her daughter. I am not an adult. And so because of that, when I set a boundary and say, I don't like this, please don't do this, it turns into a huge fight and capital letters and scripture. And I have to protect my peace. I am sad for her. She doesn't have a relationship with my sister either, by the way. My family is a mess. I don't have a relationship with my sister and my mom. They are very similar. I think they share some
mental health challenges.
Yes, mental health challenges. My dad and I have a relationship. My dad is not perfect, but he is an adult who respects me as a co-equal adult.
Yeah, he was dating in your house, so
yeah, he better kick his ass out. I will too.
Right. Curfew.
Good night. Turn off the gangster rap. Go to bed.
Go to bed.
Not kidding. This was my real experience.
Oh my God,
guys,
like,
it
Your
was
dad
right.
listens to gangster rap?
When I was coming home from my days of teaching, here I am, doing my job, come home in the driveway and the house is like vibrating with music. And I come in and he is listening to Dr. Dre.
Yes.
It's not really gangster rap. And ironing his shirts to go to the club.
That's right. He's getting ready.
God.
He was getting ready.
No, and shirts, plural
Right.
shirts, because he dances so much he's going to sweat through a
He
couple.
need change. Exactly.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding you. So, not perfect, clearly, but he also apologizes when he fucks up, which is often. And then we're cool.
But that makes that's a different dynamic, right?
It is.
That's like, there's like a level of awareness, a level of consciousness, a level of respect and consideration. Like he knows that he's not perfect. He knows that you're not perfect, but you guys have that mutual regard for each other.
Yeah.
And that helps it work.
Yes, it does. I'm more like him in that sense, in a lot of senses. But all this to say, I would love to see a happy ending. However, I don't know how capable she is of change. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my peace. Not only my peace, but also too, I am teaching my kids how to be in relationship or remove yourself from unhealthy relationships very intentionally. We talk about it a lot and they know it, they understand it. And, we'll see. We shall see.
And so you don't want to do something like give your kids the experience that Keith had, right? Where you say things with your mouth over and over and over, right? And then you do something radically different.
Yes. Yeah. No.
If you think that things aren't working for you, being honest about it is better than
Is the best.
Trying to just go by the good parent handbook and do things that you think you're supposed to do as a parent when in reality you're questioning them yourself. So
And can we also just back up to not the parent aspect? It's like relationships. Because before your parents were parents, they were in a
people.
relationship and they were people. And so the children had very little to do with why the relationship didn't work out, right? The children were bystanders and witnesses to the devolving, the evolving, the ebbs and flows, but that was happening between them. And we can't forget that part. If you're in a relationship that's not healthy for you, then you need to do something differently. And like he said, be honest about it. Like you're teaching your kids. Then remove yourself, change your location, set boundaries.
Yes.
Give less energy.
Yes.
Right? But it's like, you need to do that for you because the children are watching you. And so if you are acquiescing and contorting yourself to just stay in the relationship for them, then you're modeling for your children that this is how you have a relationship. You're showing them unhealthy behaviors, and that's their example for a relationship.
Yes. Yes. Another way I explain it to them is that, I love Mimi. I want only good things for her. I have no anger or hate in my heart at all. But when we're together, we're not our best selves.
Uh-huh.
And I want to be my best self. I want to be the best mom I can be for you. I want to be the best Laura I can be for the world. And when I'm with her or when we interact, it's not the best Laura. And so that's kind of another way I frame it, but it's that same idea.
And I'm saying even the things that you don't say, that's what they're picking up, the nonverbals. It's those things that you don't say. So if you have those conversations with them and then keep putting yourself in a position where you're not your best self with your mom, then you're demonstrating a different behavior. And so you're teaching them that duplicity.
Damn.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's like you have to be true to yourself as the adult, because that's the best way that you can teach your children to be true to themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I think I have a sense of how it impacted you when it first happened, that it being this like, oh my God, like, first of all, probably some sadness, some like confusion, some anger maybe towards your dad. And feel free to tell me if I'm missing the mark there, if there's more you want to say. But how do you feel like it continues to impact you moving forward? It's been several years.
Yeah,
I don't want to give away your age, you young looking, adorable thing.
I'm almost 40. I'm happy to say that because I'm going to be almost 40 for the next 10 years. So
yes,
you
are. We are peers. It's cool.
I mean, holidays are different. We have to hang out with the new woman. That was really difficult.
Do you call her the new woman?
No, she has a name.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to name her, but like,
yeah, I call her by her name.
What is that relationship like?
My dad changed a lot since this happened. He's very much more interested, especially when it first happened. He wanted me and my brother to come see him more. He wanted to schedule things and hang out. He started saying, I love you. He started doing a lot of things that he hadn't done for a long time. And it seemed like he was aware that this might impact our relationship and he didn't want to lose us. So my brother and I have made an effort to do both, right? So we might do Thanksgiving with my mom, but then we'll do Christmas Eve with dad and the new woman.
The new woman.
Shall remain nameless.
Voldemort.
We're navigating it as best as we can. But my major concern when this happened was my mom better be taken care of. And so far she has been. He's paying the mortgage, and that's just my concern is that this keeps up and there's going to be no more surprises, I guess. I just don't, if we can navigate it like this and hopefully my mom finds a way to build a life for herself after this, then it could be okay. But
you're still mending and healing and piecing it together and figuring it out.
I also get the sense that you're taking on a lot of worry for your mom.
I am. She's sacrificed a lot for me and for the marriage. And she's at a point now where she's alone. There's no other way to say it. She's in this 2-bedroom ranch house and she gardens, she goes to work, and she has her dog, and that's it. And I used to visit pretty regularly when I lived in the Northeast, but now that I'm down here, I'm not. So yeah, I mean, I feel for her. It's not more, she's really self-sufficient and super strong and smart. It's not worrying. It's just, I just feel for her. I wish that she had somebody.
We're going to help. This is where the socials come in. Yeah, I get all that. Like when my dad now needs a surgery, like it's not, that assumption that my parents would be able to take care of each other is not built in anymore. My dad has been dating somebody for as long as I've been married, on and off again. And she helps out when they're together. She helps when they're not, understandably. So there's that whole dynamic. We're cordial, and we spent, I think, one holiday together, and I was like, I'm good. My own mother's problematic enough. I really don't need to make this more complex with somebody I'm not even related to.
Somebody else. If you're not married,
you two are happy. I don't get it. That's great. I will call you.
Y'all
your
do
name.
you. I will see you some other time.
I won't call you the other woman. I'll call you by your name. I'll send you a Christmas card. I think, and I will say, recently my dad got sick. My dad got COVID, and I didn't. She was the one who told me. She texted me, and we kind of had this little triangle of communication, for which I'm very grateful. But it does mean that I'm the matriarch. I am the head of the family now, the way I conceptualize my family. There's no physical home to go back to. I don't have the hallmark. Let's go home for the holidays. My house is the home. Wherever I am is where the holiday is. And that's kind of weird. And yeah, some sadness for how things have turned out. I can't imagine that either one of my parents would say today, yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with how, like, I don't know that they have the happy ending. Like, seemingly your dad is in a good place and happy and has made some changes. And I wish him good too, but I think my parents are more in your mom's camp of like, this is not how I expected my life to be. So.
And somehow you all are like healthy, whole humans who are, navigating life.
I'll speak for yourself.
But even the fact that we're able to have this conversation and there's a level of like just consciousness and awareness of the difference between your feelings in the center around that, the experience of your parents, the harm that was caused between the way that it went down, Laura, with your mother kind of kicking your dad out and with your dad walking out on your mom. Yeah, we have had no tissues.
It's taken a lot of years.
But there's like, you guys are both in on a nice healing trajectory where you can talk about this in a way that may be cathartic a little, but also helpful to other people because this is real. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean that you don't have emotions and that sadness and pain aren't part of it. My parents have been married for 46 years. If they got divorced, I would be devastated.
Yes.
Like just full blown.
Full stop.
Just
Done.
Full stop. Yeah. Because that has been that's so central to our lives, vacations and planning that we do this 5 hams thing, right?
I don't know what that is, but we'll talk about that another time.
Right.
That's interesting.
Five Hamilton. 5 hams.
Oh,
that's cute.
5 hams.
The 5 hams.
Ham I am. I love that.
So I wanted just to call out the place that you are moving in and toward is not staying in the pain and staying in the anger and the frustration. It's like you're both intentionally trying to move to a place where you can love and respect and interact with your parents, both of them, in ways that you feel safe, comfortable, and confident. And that's really a beautiful growth part, right? Like you're going to experience the pain. You're going to have the sadness. And some people get stuck there.
Thank you. It took a lot of fucking work, a lot of tears. I have to shout out to all of my friends who were there through all the Kleenex years, because there were Kleenex years. Whitney and Lissa and all the other people who were just like picking up pieces. I feel like every fucking time I turned around. Thank you to Dr. Jones, who gave me my prescription for Lexapro in this time. I called him because my parent thing had already fallen apart. And then my husband, boyfriend then, proposed to me and we got engaged and I was so happy. And then it was like, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to navigate this with my parents going through this mess? And so I called him one day. I was like, can you, called his nurse. He calls me back and he goes, I've been waiting for this call. Because he took care of my whole family and knew it was all imploding.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Dr. Jones, for literally saving my sanity. And I still love that Lexapro to this day. It took a lot. Again, it's not let's do this. How about what advice we would give to someone who's going through this as an adult? Because this is going to continue to happen, especially post-COVID, people being in close quarters and being like, what the fuck? I'm out. And people living longer and having a second chapter, a third chapter of life. What advice could we give? What encouragement, maybe I hate advice, but like, what encouragement could we give to other adult children of divorce who find themselves completely unmoored and like their foundation's been pulled?
It's a good question. I would say, if possible, maybe lean on your siblings, because friends, for me, in my experience, weren't super understanding about it. They were like, okay, you're old, your parents got divorced, who cares?
Wow,
But
right.
if you have a sibling or close friend who feels like a sibling, it's good to share with them what you're feeling and figure out, like, is this normal? Am I being irrational? Am I being too angry or too upset or too worrisome? yeah, just try and find somebody to lean on and also be honest with everybody involved. Just because a parent was great in a lot of ways, it doesn't mean that their behavior is always going to be perfect. And if they're doing things that you think are not good, let them know. Don't be afraid to. Sometimes it can make a difference, even if it's just, this is how I feel. I'm not comfortable with this, or I would prefer if you did this. Just be honest.
And you have a say for how that person interacts with you, right?
And
You may not be able to control how things shake out in a settlement and all
yeah,
these
no,
other things, right? But you can control how, on the terms with which, mom or dad, I'm not comfortable with you talking to me about this. I need to protect my peace. I hear that you need to talk to someone. I think you should. It can't be me. Like those kind of things I think are so helpful to give language to that, because it's really weird and hard to navigate, and you feel like you can't be there for everybody, or listening to one means you're taking a side, and it's just complicated. So take care of you, because that's an important component. You're a fully fledged human and deserve kindness and care too. So I agree.
And your parents are people,
Yeah.
which means that they're flawed. They're not perfect. They're people, and people make choices that are hard for you sometimes, but we have to remember that just like us, they're people, and they're imperfect. And even though we may have a picture of who we think that they are, that picture is still incomplete.
Yeah. That's a great way
And
to.
one more takeaway:
Yeah.
don't stay together for the kids, please.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Don't stay together for the kids, because you could make it to 70 and realize you did it all wrong. So
Reduce harm regardless of where you are, right? Regardless of what age. If you're unhappy now, I'm not saying, you've had one rough day, that's it, throw in the towel by any means. I'm not saying, I'm not pro-divorce, but I will say, if you know that this is not moving in the direction you want, do not belabor. Do what you need to do for you, and start setting up, spend that energy supporting and setting up systems of care for you and your kiddos.
And be honest about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, this was a great conversation.
It was heavy, but good.
yeah,
Thank you all for your honesty.
I feel like I owe somebody $150 for the hour.
Not at
What?
all. No leather couches involved. You are good. I don't take your copay. Yeah, Corey, thanks for listening to and being able to pick out the pieces that maybe we were too in the weeds to see. That was helpful as well.
My pleasure. Thank you all for listening to Pushing Past Polite, where we talk about what matters and make the world more just. I'm Corey.
I'm Laura. And
I'm Keith.
Thanks for joining us, Keith.
Thanks. We appreciate your transparency and honesty. And we want this for you out there listening. If you are finding yourself in a similar situation or can relate to some element, talk to somebody you care about. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Pushing Past Polite. We encourage you to go deeper in your trusted spaces or find new space for good conversation. You'll find content to help you get started on our social media channels.
We're at Pushing Past Polite on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Pushing Past Polite is an independent podcast with Corey and Laura from Just Educators.
Our cover art was designed by Rachel Welsh DeIga of DeIga Designs, and our audio is produced by Keith at Headset Media. Until next time, don't get stuck talking about the weather. Push past polite.
See you next time.